Hey y'all, it's Melissa. Welcome back to Twin Oaks Farm Poultry. Thank you for joining us in rural Southeast Ohio, USA at our little farm, Twin Oaks Farm. We raise Cornish rock cross meat chickens here specifically for the production of wholesome and delicious poultry. We also do raise egg production chickens, but we are continuing the countdown here on Twin Oaks Farm Poultry on YouTube of getting ready for meat bird move-in day. So we're doing a countdown to meat bird move-in day. We've been taking basically a planning step at a time and talking through it to share with y'all our reference point for preparing for these meat birds to move in. And so we're up to tip 15 in the countdown to meat bird move-in day. And this one is great because this is kind of the step where we finally see things shift from being like planning steps and planning stages where things are happening in our minds and happening on paper where we're planning things out. And now that's been like 2 weeks of keeping it in the back of my mind, getting ready for meat birds to move in. Now we're down to just a week from when the meat birds will be moving in. And that's when things kind of shift into action steps and taking those things that we've planned and actually physically putting them in place or doing more of the things that we need to do. So tip 15 of our countdown to meat bird move-in day in this video is to share with you our steps that we've taken to get our building ready for our birds to actually move in. And when we were back at, I believe, tip 12 and tip 13, we asked a couple of planning questions for a point of reference. How do we want the space to be that we finish our birds in? And how do we want the space to be that we start our birds in? And so those planning steps give operators or producers, even small flock chicken keepers, it gives us the opportunity to think through, yeah, what housing arrangement do I want for my birds and how do I want that to function and how will I manage that space? And is it going to be stressful for me or is it going to be relatively manageable for me? So like I said, in tip 12 and tip 13, we were actually just planning that. And so with tip 15, we are saying now, even though our birds are still a week away from moving in, let's go put those plans in place. Let's see if the plans that we came up with when we put them in place physically, does that translate to something that we're satisfied with? Now, y'all remember that we've had, there's Mama Hen and Oakley Chick. Y'all remember that we've had Mama Hen and Oakley Chick in this meat bird production barn. So Oakley was hatched June 30th of 2023. And here we are approaching August 23rd when our meat birds move in of 2023. That's just a week away. So things are going to change for Mama Hen and Oakley Chick, but they're seeing that because these short walls here went up just in the last 24 hours. And so what I'm showing you there with that short wood wall is basically the perimeter of where we want our birds to finish. Everything inside of this short wooden wall will accommodate our 300 Cornish rock cross meat chickens as they grow. So basically, when we get to the end of 6 weeks with them, they are going to have all of that space. And if as they're growing, we get the sense that they're crowded and they need more space, then we can always adjust. But one of the reasons we do this as a short wall is so that we can easily step over it. So I just stepped over it and I'm in there. Now these birds can actually get over this wall fairly easy. Most meat chickens, the Cornish rock cross meat chickens, most of the time they don't breach that wall at all. So having said that, this is the space that we want to finish these birds in. And of course, these are supplies, feeders, and waters, and they'll be spread around the pen evenly for the benefit of the birds. Having said that this is a space that we want to finish 300 birds in, well, then what's the deal with this? Well, we don't really want or need to give the chicks the same amount of space that the growing birds will need later. So we plan for a smaller confinement when they're younger. And this is probably not a typical brooding situation. that you've seen if you've visited maybe like the large farm supply retailers where they have the chicks in large livestock, basically water tanks. And that's actually a way that chicks could be brooded at home as well if the quantity of the chicks allows that. But in our case, like working with 300 chicks, they would grow out of that so quickly that we prefer to start with something that they'll be able to stay in just a little bit longer. So what we did, in addition to, so there's, our short wooden wall again. So in addition to building our short wooden wall for where we want to finish the birds within our building, we also built a smaller confinement. We used the short wood wall for one side of it because, again, that's a place where I can very easily go in and out of the brooder. I just stepped over the wall, and if I need to leave it, I can step over it that way, because it's really actually very hard to do work around the chicks when like right in, inside the pen amongst them. So I want it to be very easy for me to get into it. I don't want to have to open up a door or move a barrier because they're fast and they're small and they can get and dart in and out of places quickly. Also, it'd be really nice if my whole area around, my whole perimeter around the brooder would be like that, because I could work around from the outside. But as it is, I'll have to step in. But at least this gives me a place that if I could reach something from right here, I can work from outside the pen, or I can very carefully step in the pen and know where my foot is going. Because these little birdies, they're so fast and they're so small, it really is a risk of stepping on them. But wanted to say more about our little brooder here. So as I said, this little brooder space is a space within a space. And if you want to have it more closed in for your birds, you certainly can do that. We actually don't recommend something like having holes in it, but because the birds can get out so easily. Because actually, like this size hole up here, we tried having a crate set in a different way one time. They can get through this size hole, but this size hole, they can't. So you have to be really mindful if there's any gaps or little holes and you're raising little chicks, that they can't get through it and get somewhere you don't want them to be or that's dangerous for them. So anyway, so with this brooder, we'll be able to start our 300 chicks and keep them confined a little bit more. A good reason to confine chicks into a smaller space is, for one thing, they do produce body heat. Now, in this brooder situation where it's really not very closed up, they're probably not going to produce enough body heat for me to be able to take away heat lamps. But if it's more closed in, as long as you're careful about that and you're making sure they still can get fresh air, you actually can reduce the amount of heat lamps you need, brooder lamps you need, with a more closed up space, because those little chicks will put off enough body heat to create heat and stay comfortable. But as I said, with us, I'm putting 300 birds in here. I don't want to have to deal with them growing out of something every 2 days. So we just accept that we're going to start with a little bigger space. It's going to be a little more open where we can work in and out of it. We're going to have to use a few more heat lamps if needed, and that's just what we're going to do. So what's probably going to happen in that brooder space is, if we do go ahead and start them in it the way you saw it, that's going to probably last for about 4 days. And I'm basing that off of those heat lamps are really going to only have enough space for the chicks to be under it and be comfortable for about 75 chicks initially. And that's only going to last a few days, because those chicks are going to grow very quickly. And so very quickly, maybe only about 50 chicks will be able to be at each light. So what is actually going to end up happening is we're going to extend like this side by a whole nother crate, which obviously this side will have to extend by a whole nother crate to match that. But we're going to move it this way and extend this side by a whole nother crate as well. And then I've got another place, got to get where the lighting's right. I've got another place for a heat lamp here, but we're going to move that down that support a little further so the heat lamp will hang about here. And it has, going up to the rafters, it has a matching chain there we'll bring down. So we'll have a set of 2 more heat lamps right here, and they can reach that electric. It's a quad electric fixture, so they can reach that. So we'll end up with 6 heat lamps in there then, and that will accommodate our probably about 50 chicks at a lamp and accommodate our 300 for how long? Maybe about 14 days. And then to day 14, I should say. And then what will happen is we'll take the yellow transport crates away, and we'll be able to let these chicks just spread out into this entire area that I showed you that is surrounded by those short wood walls. And we actually have set up for lighting fixtures all through this area that they'll have if we need them. I hope we don't need them, because it costs a lot. It costs a lot of money to run those heat lamps. But if we need them, we need them. Our situation we're looking at is rural Southeast Ohio, temperatures daytime, at least the first week that we have chicks, looking like 90 degrees during the day, 60 degrees at night. So they're going to be really comfortable in the daytime, and at night we're going to need the supplemental heat on them. We probably are going to just get cooler. So we're probably going to have supplemental heat at least at night for the duration of this flock. But when we pull these yellow crates away and let them spread out, we also, just like we have these hung up on the wall for storage, we have places to put those. So we'll hang them up, and these 300 birds will get to fill all this in. So that's, I spent a lot of time on it, but again, it's a really important step. This is where we go from planning to action to putting things physically in place. Tip 15, take your plans for housing your birds and physically set it up and make sure that you're satisfied with it. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you. Please subscribe to Twin Oaks Farm Poultry, and if you're raising poultry, we wish you only success.